Dew crusted the edge of the porch table like a thin line of salt. The lake was so still I could see myself split in it. Half Mom hauling out a trash bag and yesterday's half-eaten cookies Emma baked. Half Pilot counting breaths by checklist. The porch flag clicked, not wind, just the cords rubbing the pole, reminding me of one thing. What's mine needs to be tied down like a mooring line. Rick shoved the door. The hinge screeched like it was scratching the wood. He crossed the wet grass, shoes stamping dark ovals. "I'm telling you the truth, you and your kid are freeloaders in my house." He said it loud like he'd paid for the volume. The words hit the water and broke into rings. I glanced at the kitchen clock through the window. The hands didn't move, but my heart did. I didn't answer. I flipped the same invisible switch I use before every takeoff. Observe, verify, prioritize. Emma stood at the edge of the yard, hugging her baseball glove like a skittish cat. Her eyes asked if she should run. "Inside, kiddo," I said, soft enough not to shatter the morning, firm enough for her to trust no one gets to yell at her. She nodded and slipped past me, hair smelling faintly of apple shampoo. The slider shut. The track made a little metal note. Ava was next door, picking moss off a kayak bow. She glanced over in time to see Rick plant himself at my grill like a general claiming the fuel depot. I lifted the lid to check a hinge. Nothing to check. Really? Just giving my hand something to do so his words could pass through without sticking. I clocked the oil bloom on his cargo pants, the fingerprints on the glass, the fat envelope my mother left on a chair. People always leave traces when they think they own a place. "You're here because of family, remember?" Rick jerked his chin toward the door like his witnesses were inside. I smiled without showing teeth. "The name on the papers is mine," I said, each word landing where it needed to like toggles going OFF/ on in the cockpit. He snorted, magnanimous. "Paper is paper, family is family. I don't argue definitions. Arguing is the scenic route. I chose the straight line. I pulled the beat-up flight notebook off the living room shelf. The cracked edge was taped clear. In the middle, a tabbed page in highlighter, engine out/emergency. I didn't need to read it. I just needed the feel of something solid in my hand. Mom stepped out clutching a cardigan like someone might snatch it away. She side-eyed the neighbor's yard and tugged Rick's sleeve to lower his voice. He only turned it up. "Since everyone's around, let's say it. This house belongs to the family. We're only here for now until the business stabilizes. Then you'll be reasonable." That phrase clicked like a safety pin sprung loose. Be reasonable means opening the fuel door on your own aircraft so someone else can pour in whatever they need. A duck cut under the surface and vanished, leaving a nervous trail of ripples. I thought about my first auto-rotation, rotor dropping as fast as a dark thought. The instructor said, "Don't panic, hold your angle, feel the air." I put myself there. "Tonight," I said, "we'll have dinner and talk, enough people, enough light." Rick frowned like it was nonsense. Orders aren't for pleasing ears, they're for drawing lines. Ava wandered over with a social smile, hands rough dry from the lake. "Lively for this early," she said, like throwing a blanket over a small fire. Rick dialed himself down a notch and drifted off to check his company truck at the curb. Ava tipped her head, "Everything okay?" "We're fine," I said. "Just reorganizing the house." The word organize steadied me. I do my best work with a list. I cleared the table. Emma's stack of plastic bowls, a dish towel with yesterday's barbecue stain, a grill knife with a chipped handle. Even small things have their formation. I slid them onto a tray and inside and filed 3 columns in my head. Kid, house, paperwork. I wasn't in the mood for morning morals. I was in the mood for evening precision when everything is still. Mom stood alone by the grass line. "Don't make a scene in front of people," she whispered, just loud enough for me, not for Rick. I turned and saw the creases at her eyes, the ones that show when she's afraid of losing face, not losing me. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm making it clear. Her fingers pinched the hem of her sweater like a thinning rope. I set the flight notebook on the counter. The tab flashed under the light. Somewhere a wooden hull tapped the dock, hollow, real. Rick looped back with the smug look of a guy who just checked the warehouse and found every door unlatched. Dinner, remember, I said again, smooth as calling a briefing time. He smirked. Don't make me repeat, be reasonable. I let it sink and disappear. Closing the slider, the latch made a small practice click. Emma peeked from the steps, hair a little wild. Mom, can I practice throws out front? She asked, careful, like she could feel the undertow. Sure, I said. Just don't hit our windows, this is our house. I put weight on our and didn't look to the door for effect. I wasn't hunting for a reaction. I was teaching my kid the sound of a true sentence. When she ran out, gloves swinging, a dark strip of grass trailed off the path. I flipped my grocery list and used the blank side. First line wasn't milk or eggs. I wrote, light witnesses, paperwork, boundaries. 4 words like 4 piers under a foundation. Next to them, 1 dash, Emma. Not a pier, a reason. The morning inched by like mist lifting off the water. Rick paced inside, voice loud enough to touch the ceiling. In the living room, Mom's eyes shone, fingers worrying a bracelet like a loose bolt. I washed my hands, dried them, slid the notebook into my hoodie. The doorknob was cool against my back as I breathed in. A simple panel lit up in my head, every switch in its lane. I wouldn't get mad. I wouldn't ask permission. I was just setting the flight profile. Tonight there'd be a table, a few plates, and a conversation with a structure I already knew. Opening, verification, asks, decision. Dinner wasn't for eating well. Dinner was for clarity. Through the glass, I watched Ava shove her kayak into the water. See you tonight, she called, casual as weather talk. Maybe, I said, if you don't mind the sound of dishes. She winked. Dishes mean a house is alive. I smiled. The house is alive, and you only call a place home when you know which locks open, which stays shut, and who holds the keys. I patted my pocket, the square of the flight notebook right where it should be. Enough people, enough light, I repeated to the walls so they could learn my voice. Then I spread a clean towel on the table. Everything would sit where it belonged, and if anyone didn't know their place tonight, I'd tell them. The dock I grew up on always smelled like gas and moss, like the water itself breathed metal. That's when Rick first appeared, white polo, sunglasses, a smile sliding across a car hood of a face. Mom said, Rick knows business, then smoothed my hair. You won't worry about tuition, he promised. I nodded, trusting that adults knew how to turn words into checks that clear on time. That summer I learned to tie bowlines and to smile while someone spoke confidently about a future that belonged to me but sounded like it belonged to them. Senior spring, I sat at the kitchen table with my acceptance letter next to a bowl of strawberry jam. Mom hugged me. My girl did it. Rick drummed a done deal rhythm with his fingers. Tuition's not a problem, he said. When charter season hits, cash flows like the tide. I tucked that line into my yearbook and dreamed of dorms and a city where everything starts with new. Fall came and the tide slipped out without warning. I heard Mom on the phone, voice small, salted. We'll temporarily pull from the tuition fund to keep the boat afloat. Rick taught me new words, working capital, opportunity, compound returns, all of them sounding like an engine of promises. I learned my own word, replacement. It meant replacing the runway to my dream with a different flight plan. I walked into the guard recruiting office. A poster read, serve close to home, over a helicopter parked on gravel. I signed my name with a hand that trembled like throwing a key into sand and hoping it doesn't sink. A sergeant handed me a stack of forms. We do everything by checklist, one item at a time. For the first time, I felt light. Maybe the world wouldn't pay for college, but it had given me a panel full of honest switches. In training, my heels blistered in new boots. I learned to lace them with a double lock knot, pulling both ends like I was cinching down a decision. Night ranges smelled like rust and sweat. The cotter repeated, "Hold rotor speed, calm is fuel." I wrote it in the margins of a cheap flight notebook. The cover wore down. Corners curled like the wing of a letter that would never be mailed. The first time I pulled on a flight suit and saw myself in the locker room mirror, olive green settled my chest in a way I didn't know was possible. Mason stood in the doorway with a tool box and a grin. "Sir," he caught himself. "I mean, ma'am." We laughed at the slip, but in that laugh was a recognition I'd never had before. I belonged here. He taught me to hear an engine the way you hear a lie in a living room. If there's a strange noise, don't ignore it. Rick got busy with boat tours. Mom texted photos of him toasting at the dock. "We're going to be okay." I didn't know what okay meant. I just knew that at the end of every month I sent money into a 529 for Emma, even before she existed. I nicknamed the account Bright Field, like an easy landing pattern. I never touched it. I wrote one line in my notebook: "No one touches her future, not even her mother." I still dropped by Mom's on free evenings. The old kitchen, the yellow light, the table with a scratch shaped like an anchor. Rick told big opportunity stories, eyes bright as headlights, until he reached the just a little short part, the tone people use when they think asking you for help is a gift to you. I poured tea and sidestepped. One night as I tidied up, Rick held out his hand. "Give me a spare key to your place. I'll pop over and tidy the yard when you're busy." Convenient is a pretty word like gift wrap. I started to refuse. Mom touched my wrist. "We're family." I let the key rest in his palm for a few seconds like it was on a scale. Then I pulled back. "Ava has my spare, changing the gate lock this week." Rick's smile flashed like a knife. He said it was fine. I learned another lesson. Grown-ups don't always ask permission, they jiggle the knob. On base, I picked up a habit. Snap a photo of everything before I step away, from fuel gauges to buckle positions. In life, I started photographing invoices, contracts, mail to Mom's house, not to accuse anyone, to prove to myself I wasn't imagining things. When you grow up on family should be reasonable. The boundary lines in your head are chalk on a gym floor. One good gust and they blur. Pictures and paperwork are the tape that keeps the lines. When Emma was born, I moved into the little lakeside place. Low roof, backyard just big enough for a table and a grill. I picked it for the water access and the way the morning fog rose like a reminder. Peace doesn't shout. Mom came for a few weeks. Rick promised to fix the wobbly step. He measured, nodded, name-dropped his company every time the hammer hit. After he left, I noticed something small. He tried every lock with a ring of keys and gave the house a look that measured more than the step. I set up USAW, ran the numbers, mortgage, insurance, taxes, every bill in my name. I laughed to myself when the VA eligibility letter downloaded. No photo captured it, but it felt like greasing a clean landing onto gravel. No smoke, no fireworks, just honest metal and ground that holds. Sometimes Mom said, "You act like you're prepping for war." I said, "I'm prepping so nobody has to fight." On SAR nights, I sat down on another lake and ferried an old man who'd slipped on rock. He gripped my wrist. "You fly this noisy thing and set it down like a teacup." I told him, "Because I know what breaks if you don't." Back home, Emma slept with her glove open like a small hand. I closed it and set it by her head. Some things are meant to stay snug. Mom's texts kept coming. Praise, lunch pics, sometimes a glossy flyer for Rick summer charters. I hearted almost all of them except the ones that smelled like just a little help. I replied, "On duty will look." I need time lag to separate data from feelings. I learned that in the cockpit, feelings can't fly the aircraft, data can. One afternoon wiping oil off the tail rotor, Mason asked, "You good?" I said, "Yeah." "Family." He added, eyes on a cotter pin. I didn't look at him either, but I nodded. He tapped the airframe. If you hear a weird sound, 9 times out of 10 something's touching where it shouldn't. The line dropped into my pocket like a key I'd owned for years and forgotten to use. I thought about Rick's first promise. Tuition's not a problem. Promises are like a freshly painted hull, glossy, but storms don't care. I wasn't angry like before. I just knew I needed more lines. Mine now were the old flight notebook, Emma's 529, and the little triangular flag I staked on my porch. I didn't know when Rick would ask for just a little in a voice that pressed harder. I only knew I wouldn't open my aircraft's fuel door for someone to pour in a liquid I couldn't name. I didn't choose the sky because I like heights. I chose it because up there I can hear my own voice. So when I said enough people, enough light, on a misty morning, it wasn't a line I improvised. It was made from all the times I stood at that dock breathing gas and believing, and all the times I set a bird down without crushing the grass. Families need light the way engine bays do. In the dark, people think they own every switch. Turn the light on and everybody stands where they actually stand. I closed the flight notebook, thumbed the edge where old tape had gone honey yellow. I don't need it to remember how to take off anymore. I need it to remember every flight has a turn-back point and I get to pick it. Emma called from the living room, showing off a drawing of a boat under a sun. I sat on the floor and listened to the crayon rasp like rope sliding on wood. There was no captain in her boat. "Forget the skipper," I asked. Emma shook her head. "I drew you in the sky. You're watching me." I laughed, warm and full, and the lake in her picture turned perfectly round like her eyes. If anyone asks why I fly, that's the answer. Mist on the flight line was so thick it looked like someone had sprayed a matte coat over the sky. I walked through that paint stripe, boots whispering on concrete. The UH-60 slept like a whale, black skin glossy with fresh fingerprints from the crew. Mason followed, toolbox swinging, metal rattling like our private alarm clock. "Auto-rotation today," he said, voice steady as a center line. I nodded. Some lessons are never extra, like one more bolt torqued just right. In the cockpit, hot plastic and oil bled into a scent I've been addicted to for years. I set my hand on the collective, as familiar as the spine of my flight notebook. Instructor, power loss. I lowered the collective, held my angle, eyes scanning instruments, heart dropping one beat into place. The airframe slid along a well-worn arc. Wind slapped the glass. The ground rose like a blanket pulled to the chin. "Flare," I whispered, and the iron bird obeyed, settling as gently as laying an inconvenient truth on a dinner table without spilling a glass. Heels on the pedals, nose straight. "Good," the instructor said. Outside, Mason lifted a thumb. One small gesture, and the world got quieter. Another day after training, a SAR call to the North Lake. An old man had slipped on rock. No one could hump him up a slick incline. Mason and I always hold a minute of silence before spool up, like giving the sky a chance to hear why it's about to help someone. We sat down on shale. Stones skittered under the skids like kids playing tag. Rotor wash whipped the water white. They slid him onto the litter, dust wrinkled his eyes. A dry hand clamped my wrist. "You fly this noisy thing and set it down like a teacup." He laughed. I laughed into the mic. "Because I know exactly what breaks if you don't." On the way back, Mason tapped my dusty name tape. "Don't let anybody fly your helicopter with their mouth." I stared out the window and saw my lawn in my head, grill, table, the little triangular porch flag. Small things somehow keeping a house upright in wind. Back at base, we rolled the bird in and through covers. I wiped the windscreen. Every pass of the rag was a clean question. What's under my authority and what's just somebody's noise? Phone buzzed. "Ava, HOA says yard and overnight vehicles inspection next week." I pictured the invisible fence from base to home. Thin line, still a line. "Thanks," I'll sort it, I texted. Mason, problem, me, paperwork. Paperwork teaches respect for boundaries you can't see. Commissary, stop. I push the cart past cereal. Emma likes the kind with tiny corn stars. 2 milks, a carton of eggs, a chicken for the Clarity dinner to come. At checkout, the clerk asked about the military discount. I nodded. Little things don't save a life, but they remind people like me there's a system at our back, one that doesn't say be reasonable. It says rules. Home, Rick's company truck nosed up to the curb, door stamped with his charter logo in khaki chrome. Mom hung white towels that smelled like detergent folded into lake air. I said I'd do the kitchen. Let Rick men do it faster, she waved. I didn't argue. I straightened the porch pennant, its edge nicking my finger, sharp little reminder of where I live. Inside, Emma spread homework on the counter, glove hooked over a chair. She clicked the little radio low, the way she does when she senses adult weather moving in. I showed her how to work an angle on the page, thinking of the approach angles I've solved 100 times. Every angle has an answer, unless someone keeps shoving you off center line. That night I hauled the trash to the curb on the right pickup day. Rick called from the couch, "Leave it, I got it." "The house's trash schedule is something I like to remember," I said. He chuckled like I'd told a joke. In the sink, dishes clinked. Water smacked porcelain like hail. Ordinary noises suddenly became a score to a scene I already knew was coming. I slid open the drawer and reviewed the stack, mortgage, insurance, taxes. My name repeating like a drumbeat. I added a printout of Ava's inspection email to the home file. Not obsession, procedure. Put each thing in its place and label the place. On top of the cabinet sat an old shoebox with dead batteries, a roll of tape, a couple of markers. I peeled a strip and retagged a bin. Garage, Rick stuff, temporary. Temporary is the only parking brake I'll allow on a hill. Mason texted a photo of a rotor catching late sun. Might rain tomorrow. Me. Rain's fine, makes the footprints show. I didn't say whose. I was already measuring everyone's position like distance from skid to shore on a tight approach. Night settled. I stepped onto the front porch. Leaves whispered like tinsel falling. On the table, I opened my flight notebook to PR reflight. Under lights, I penciled, yard replace bulbs. Under witnesses, Ava swing by tonight. Under paperwork, bills on table. Under boundaries, slider lock. 4 lines, 4 bolts just snugged. I thought about the old man's hand at my wrist. He wasn't afraid of dying, he was afraid of slipping off the bank again. Tired people and old people share that. They want 2 hands to set them down on ground. Through the window, Emma rested her head on her arm, porch light tinting her skin. I promised myself, I'll set her down on the truth as lightly as I set a ship on gravel. If anyone tries to change my approach, they'll learn the wind doesn't take orders from a mouth. Phone buzzed again. Ava. HOA asks if the truck is a long-term guest. I peered through the slats at Rick's rig. Guest, I typed, then temporary. Thumb up came back and, if needed, I'll stop by to borrow sugar. We smiled at the code. On many routes, a quiet wingman lets the aircraft commander breathe easier. I closed the notebook. The tiny click carried a kind of peace I've trained for, not because there's no risk, but because everything has a sequence. Tomorrow we fly. Tomorrow I make breakfast and talk reading homework with Emma. And tomorrow night, enough people, enough light. I don't know what Rick will put on the table. I know what I'll lay out, the truth. Truth just lies there, no shouting, no begging. It only sinks if someone stirs. I've learned to let the water settle before I ladle. I flicked off the porch light, hung my cap. The triangle flag tapped the post, a tiny handshake. I answered in my head, yep, I'm here. And here I know exactly who's on the controls. The day opened with the neighbor's mower and closed with smoke threading the curtains. In between were all the things people call family. Dishes, damp towels, shoes gone astray, half-finished reminders. Mom pitched a cookout for the vibe, told me to invite a few neighbors so everyone sees our home is warm, our home rolling off her tongue light as beer foam. I shrugged and said yes. I'm not afraid of neighbors. I'm afraid of stories told without light. Rick seized the grill so fast I had to joke, "You got a license for that." He laughed big and thumped the lid like a chest. Men are born knowing this stuff. I set down a tray of marinated chicken. Next to it, Emma's foil-wrapped corn. She doodled smiley faces on the foil. Ava came over with a salad and an excuse to borrow sugar. Neighbors chattered. Bottles hissed open. Kids thudded across the grass. I put on a low country playlist, just enough to cover Rick selling peak season to a guy at the end of the table. "Where's your office?" the guy asked. Rick, without thinking, pointed toward my back door. "We've set up here for now makes operations easy." The words "for now" hit my ear like a nail tapping wood. Guests arrived, and so did packages. A long box with his charter company's name got wheeled onto the porch. Rick signed like a landlord. Mom quickly set a pen on the mail to keep the breeze from taking it. Thick envelopes with Linda and Rick rose to the top in bold ink. I said, "Easy. I'll take these to the garage. Everyone's personal items go in the right-hand corner labeled." Mom murmured sure. Rick didn't hear, busy carving meat and pitching, expanding the fleet. Ava slid me a look and whispered, "HOA's watching that truck overnight. Rules max 3 nights a week." I nodded. I know, it's a temporary guest. I'd been slapping temporary on every bin in the garage like medical tape on a scrape, not to hide it, to remind me it comes off. Dusk buttered the porch light yellow. Rick's tone shifted to a sermon. "Family helps family, especially when I'm carrying the brand. This house is prime. Lakeview like this is heaven sent." I sipped water and thought of the mortgage with my name printed in bold. Ava drifted off for more ice. Emma sat on the steps, legs swinging in striped socks, glove beside her, listening to adults talk without knowing why the wind had changed. After dinner, Rick said, "Let me clean up," which meant reorganizing the grill to his pattern and walking his tool box into my garage. I followed and flipped the light. Half my stuff, half his, brochures, branded teas, fuel cans. I pointed to a label, "Garage, Rick's items, temporary." He arched a brow. "How long is temporary on a pilot's checklist?" "On a homeowner's," I said. "It means until before the HOA inspection." He shrugged. "I'll move the truck tomorrow." It wasn't a promise, just the tone of a man used to winning by wearing people down. That night I fed tablecloths to the washer, scrubbed pans, checked locks. Mom sat in the recliner flipping channels, sighing like sighing had been assigned to her. "Fun day," she said. "Everyone said our home is welcoming." The dishwasher hummed like a rotor far off. "I like company," I said, "but every door is still a door." Mom winced. "You and your wording." I smiled. "Wording keeps doors on their hinges." Morning, more packages, another row of long boxes. I signed for Rick, noting put in labeled temporary zone. The driver asked, "You the owner here?" I nodded. He tipped his cap. Could tell. Not because I was stern, probably because I open a door like someone who owns the keys. In the kitchen, Mom magneted a weekly menu to the fridge with a whale magnet. Rick added BBQ with partners to tomorrow night. I tore that line off, dropped it in a drawer. "Tomorrow night, my house is busy." His brow creased. "Partners need to feel the family spirit." I set a water bottle on the table and met his eyes. "Family spirit isn't proven with a dinner at my address." He shrugged and wandered off, but my address stayed standing in the room like a signpost. Ava brought over the official HOA notice, backyard, path, and vehicles inspection next week. "I'll pin it to the fridge," she said, tidy grin unhideable. I thanked her. When Ava left, Rick clicked his tongue. "Too many rules, how do people live?" I thought, "Too much chaos, how does any house stay a house?" Emma practiced throws out front. I counted cadence and tossed soft. The sound of the ball settling in her glove was calm itself. "How long are Nana and Rick staying?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the gravel path, the ruts his truck had pressed in. "Until temporary stops being the right word." She nodded, half understanding, which is often enough for smart kids. By afternoon, Rick staged a photo in my kitchen with the lake behind him, posted it somewhere. Mom adjusted a vase for the aesthetic. Someone commented, "Dream office." I turned the screen off. I don't feed what I don't want to grow. That night, as I tucked Emma's glove into the basket, my phone buzzed. Group chat Rick had family named. "Big chance to add another doc. Need to temporarily mortgage the deed so the bank is calm, just a few weeks. Our family will level up." The words temporarily mortgage glittered like a fishhook. Below it, a corn-on-the-cob emoji, as if a sticker could soften a crack in the wall. I stared at it the way you study a new hairline split, tiny, but it runs fast if you ignore it. I didn't reply. I flipped the phone and taped a note to the cabinet for tomorrow. Yard lights, replace bulbs, bills, print, table clear, slider, adjust track. I pulled a clean towel and drew it across the countertop, thin light following the weave like a blade. Mom came in, watched me for a beat. "You saw Rick's text," she said. I set the towel down and answered the kitchen like it had a cockpit. "I heard it." She exhaled the way people squeeze through a tight place by shutting their eyes first. "Our family," she began. I cut in. "Tomorrow night, enough people, enough light." Outside, I rehung the porch pennant and took one more wrap on the knot. Across the water, porch lights from the far shore stuck to the lake like small nails. Somewhere Ava called her dog. Somewhere tires rolled over gravel. I checked my hoodie pocket for the square weight of my flight notebook. It was there, quiet, reminding me autonomy doesn't make noise. It just needs a firm grip. Back inside, the phone buzzed again. Same family thread. "Let's invite a few folks tomorrow to talk." Shows partners were united. I looked at the wall where Emma's softball trophy photo hangs, her eyes curved like a summer lake. I laid the phone face down, killed the kitchen lights, and left the porch lamp on. That light isn't for show. It's there so anyone passing by understands this place is watched. And if someone tries to drag in a shadow too long for the room, they'll learn the light moves. Outside, water brushed the shore. Inside, the dishwasher kept its clockwork. I listened to both the way you listen for rotor rhythm at a safe distance. Tomorrow night, when the table goes bright, I'll set things down like setting skids. Straight, solid, exact. For now, I won't answer the text. Some things pick up your fingerprints if you grab too soon. I want everything dry. Then I'll lift it with both hands clean. The phone split the quiet clean as a box cutter. Mom on the screen. The corner timestamp made me notice the clock read 0:43. On the other end, her voice foamed and broke. Rick's not well. Doctor says watch him. The bank's pressing. Can you temporarily put up your deed so they're calm? We'll return it next week. Family needs to be reasonable." I listened without answering, like a pilot hearing a strange noise before touching a switch. I held the phone to my ear and looked through the doorway at Emma's room. She was curled on her side, baseball glove hugged across her belly like a skittish pet. "I hear you," I said softly. Then I hung up. No promise, no soothing. The kitchen was dark except for the fridge light. I opened my laptop. The fan whispered like somebody breathing in the next room. I typed the charter company's name into public records. The letters wriggled like a fish trying to jump the net. I followed them, from business registry to lawsuits, from local news to distressed asset listings. In a corner of a page I never used to check were steel-cold words. UC 1, continuation, lien, assignment. Those words don't scare someone who lives by checklists. The file was almost disappointingly simple. a second position loan secured by the main boat and equipment. The creditor, a small recovery fund that had posted a few weeks ago that the note was for sale at a discount. I screenshotted and saved with unromantic names, one UCC filing. PNG 2 note for sale. PNG. Mason's line came back to me. If there's a weird noise, 9 times out of 10 something's touching where it shouldn't. Looked like Rick had let his debt touch what it shouldn't and wanted to drag my whole house to touch with it. New note. 4 lines like 4 bolts. Verify value leverage exit. Under verify, UCC screenshots, the note for sale post, all home bills in my name, the HOA notice. Under value, ballpark the boat/equipment from year condition, the brag photos Rick posted, match serials to the UCC. Under leverage, consider buying the note at a deep discount, become the secured creditor, which means I don't have to knock with a loud voice. Under exit, enforce a move out on a schedule or restructure on my terms, not his. I pulled out a chair and treated the kitchen like a mission planning room. The table was the flight line, the paperwork, the parking ramp. I printed a few pages. The printer snorted and clipped them into home. Docs, fresh ink mixed with the night's metallic smell. In the living room, the TV murmured an old story where the main character is always family. I drank water, set the glass down centered to the table's edge, pointless habit, but it pins my center of gravity. Text buzz. Rick, in the family group. Bank's on my neck, need a quick solution. Tomorrow I'll invite partners to meet at our house. I set the phone face down and counted 8 breaths the way I count rotor RPM back into the green. When I flipped it, my hand was dry. Dinner is family only, no partners. Period. I messaged Torres, the lawyer who tweaked my insurance last year. You free 30 minutes at open. Need to ask about assignment of note and security interest. Urgent but tidy. He pinged back almost instantly. Doors at 0800. Bring paper. I didn't say the time out loud. I just wrote on the checklist, Torres 30. Night rolled over the kitchen like a black cloud crossing the lake. I checked the slider and hit the squeaky track with lube. Not fear of break-ins. I just wanted the only sound tomorrow night to be people hearing their own truth. I opened a drawer, took the envelope with Emma's baseball photo, and slipped it into a folder labeled Witness. Ava had told me, if needed, I'll swing by to borrow sugar. I added her name under Light Witness's paperwork boundaries. Since I scribbled those 4 on a sticky, they've become my pocket map. I'll walk everyone by that map so we don't get lost in the woods of Be Reasonable. While the dishwasher hummed soft as faraway rain, I scrolled Rick's socials. Boat pics, deck pics, gauge pics. He'd even posted a close-up of the engine serial to brag all original. I zoomed, matched numbers to the UCC, clean match. I saved it as 3 engine serial, JPG, verify, complete. What are you doing? Mom stood in the doorway clutching her cardigan like an orphan. I swiveled the chair and met her eyes, soft enough not to shatter her, firm enough to keep the story from drifting. Putting light where it belongs. She turned away, mouth working. He just needs a little. I shook my head. A little of my daughter's future is too much. She exhaled a tired balloon sound. After she went to bed, I poured a small drink, just enough to warm the throat. I didn't deserve a reward, but I did deserve air. I repeated 3 rules in my head. No mortgaging the house. No touching the 529. No yielding to volume. If they want reasons, I'll point to Emma. Everything else is prose. An email fell into my inbox like a leaf. A distressed debt broker, subject plain. Note for sale charter company collateral, boats and equipment discount available. I skimmed it like a nodam. Same structure I expected. Buy the note, step into the secured position, set a plan, or take collateral. I'm no lawyer, but I understand position. In the air or at a table, position decides whether you're the one asking or the one setting terms. I shut the laptop. The porch light shaved a thin golden strip across the floor. Somewhere a hull tapped a piling, hollow thock measuring out time between breaths. I slid the folder to the table's edge, leaned it against the lone ceramic bowl in a kitchen mostly plastic. Ceramic breaks easy, but in the right place it's the center of the meal. I will set the truth there. Anyone who touches it will hear the china speak. Before lights out, I added a line under leverage. Call current holder / confirm price morning W/Torres. I didn't write a time. I just drew an arrow from leverage to boundaries. They lock together like rotor and skids, one lifts, one holds. I tucked Emma's blanket and she mumbled nonsense that my ears translated to Mom's here. My hand on her hair, I remembered the old man on the litter. Set the glass down easy. I will. In the morning, we'll fly the plan. Tomorrow night, I'll speak with the voice of someone who knows her route. And if anyone tries to take the controls, they'll find I already set the mode. No one else is flying this. Outside, wind flicked the porch pennant. It made a tiny fingernail tap on the post. I killed the kitchen light and left the porch lamp one watching eye. Everything's staged. I closed my eyes and saw the panel, switches in their rows, warnings going dark. On that panel, I just labeled a new button. Buy note if/then. If they still think be reasonable means open your fuel door, then my when/then is simple. Buy their debt and invite them off the aircraft. The day shut with a small click of the slider. That sound said it for me. Tomorrow there will be light, and people almost never like what the light shows. I laid the table like a flight line. Clean cloth pulled tight, just enough plates and silverware, a neat stack of documents in the center. Roast chicken crackled, foil-wrapped corn steamed like fog. The pendant light through warm gold, bright enough to show every salt grain. Emma sat at the island with homework open, pencil ticking a steady beat. I wanted that ordinary sound to be the soundtrack, not adults pounding a table. Rick came in wearing the smile of a man sure of the outcome. Mom followed, hands already damp like she just washed doubt off them. "Let's eat," I said, pulling out chairs, setting utensils, laying a knife on a plate rim like a line to keep the story straight. We did the minimum niceties. Then Rick slid a fat envelope to my side. "Bank papers," he said. "Just a temporary agreement so they'll relax. Family needs to be reasonable." I didn't open it. I eased my stack into the light so the boldface would glint. Electric, water, insurance, mortgage, the same name repeating to the point of boredom. "The name on the papers," I said, "is mine." I fanned the HOA notice and a printed UCC filing with his boat serial. Rick glanced down. For a second, his eye pinched like he smelled something burning. "I don't want a debate. I want a solution," he said, planting his pen on the envelope, pushing hard like ink pressure equals resolve. "Sign it a couple weeks, we're done, I promise." Mom added, "Honey, helping in the family, don't make this hard." I poured water and centered the glass between them. "We all want a solution," I said flat. "But my house is not collateral for your company, and Emma's fund is not a reserve tank." Rick snorted, leaning in. "I'm not touching the kid." He tapped the envelope. "Just a signature, make the bank comfortable." I met his eyes and flipped the switches one by one. No collateral, no guarantees, no signatures on anything tied to your company, no using my home address as office or storage. I slid a blank sheet on top and wrote 4 lines, one under the other. Tonight's rules of engagement. Mom swallowed. "You sound like a soldier." I nodded. "I am, and I want no one fighting tonight." I smiled at Emma and motioned her back to work. Her pencil went back to its metronome. Rick popped the pen cap, tack. "Then straight talk. If you don't sign, the bank will squeeze. The whole family suffers." The word family popped from his mouth and bounced across the table like a kernel of corn. I let it roll off the edge. Family isn't a hostage, I said, and this house is not your refueling point. He shifted tone, low and yanking like pulling fence posts. Ungrateful girl, if it weren't for me, your mother. I raised my hand, not high, just enough to stop him. Don't yell at my mother, don't yell at my child. Emma startled and dropped her cup. It rolled and clacked on the floor. I crossed, picked it up, wiped the water. 2 passes with the towel and my hands were dry again. I sat and dragged my stack closer. This is the truth, I said, tapping each page. Mortgage, my name. Insurance, my name. Utilities, my name. HOA warning about overnight parking your company truck. I slid the UCC printout over. And this is your second position debt being offered for sale. He squinted. You spying on me? I shrugged. I'm watching my house. Mom trembled. Don't humiliate him. I softened. I don't want anyone humiliated. I want it clear. Back to Rick. 2 items before we leave this table. 1, retire the phrase be reasonable as a command. 2, choose a date to vacate my house within a reasonable window. I didn't say a number. I let the air count. He slapped his palm to the wood, the thud dry as chicken skin held too long to flame. I'm not going anywhere. My house, did you forget? I'd heard it this morning. Now it wasn't a flare, it was a nail to pull. I cocked my head at the papers. Got proof for your house that isn't just your volume. Half a beat. Then he tried, family talks in trust. I smiled a hair. Aviation talks in checklists. I pushed the 4 lines back across, no collateral, no guarantees, no address, pick a date. Read it out loud, I said. He stared, then shoved the page aside. No signature, no dinner in this house. Freeloader, he spat. Emma's eyes went wide. I turned my body between them. No one in my house gets called that ever again. My voice stayed low, heavy as the lead weight on a plumb line. The front door eased. Ava slipped in with a brown paper sack of sugar. Borrowing sugar, she said, face pleasantly blank. Sorry to intrude. I nodded at the counter. Her presence was another bulb switched on, not harsh, just enough to shrink the shadows. Rick leaned back, reaching for a sneer. You invite the neighbor to smear me. I shrugged. No, I'm turning on the light. I pulled the tea towel off the stack and left everything exposed. From now on, no more hands digging in drawers like this is your kitchen. I opened a drawer and set the spare house keys on the table. Keys to my house don't wander. The room's temperature changed. It felt like the thermostat clicked up a degree. Mom hiccuped and dabbed her eyes. I leaned toward her quiet. Stay as long as you want, as long as you step out of his business. I won't shame you. I just won't let my daughter lose her home. She nodded, head down, shoulders settling after a few tremors. Rick stood, the chair scraped a hard line. I've got partners. I've got a plan. You don't sign, the bank shows up tomorrow. He pointed the pen like a dart. Then your family finds out what losing face is. I sipped and set the glass dead center again. No one comes here tomorrow unless they have an appointment with the homeowner, I said slowly. And tomorrow, a call will come to your phone, not from me, from someone you should hear. His brow nodded. Is that a threat? I stood and slid my chair in like retracting the gear. It's not a threat, it's a notice. I turned to Emma. You finished, kiddo. She nodded and hugged her glove. I clipped my stack into a folder. Dinner's over, I said. And from tonight, the rules live on the wall. I taped the 4 lines to the cabinet with a strip of clear tape. Rick laughed one more time, the sound tinny as an empty beer can slapped on wood. You'll regret this. I held his gaze, let the silence stretch until the fridge dropped an ice cube with a clack. I won't regret protecting my home, I said. You should get sleep. Tomorrow you'll need to be alert when the phone rings. I started clearing plates. Ava lifted her sugar bag, waved, and backed out. Mom stayed put, eyes red, but this time she didn't look away. Warm water ran steady in the sink. I washed each fork like I was scrubbing off the day-long residue of be reasonable. The front door shut. Rick's steps thudded toward the living room. I dried the table. The overhead light drew a long stripe across the wood, a runway. In my head, the rotor beat went steady, the vibration even, needles in the green. The next flight was briefed. Tomorrow I put position back where it belongs. And when Rick's phone buzzes, he'll learn exactly which warning light is on. I switched off the kitchen light and left the porch lamp. The house stayed warm by my rules. Outside, the lake lapped the shore. Small sound, just enough to remind me everything has a bank. And banks are the lines I redrew tonight. Torres's office opened early. Black coffee and warm toner braided in the air like a different kind of city fuel. He wore a white shirt with sleeves neat to the forearms and the look of a man who's watched 100 family plays. "What you bring?" he asked. I dropped the folder and snapped the big clip. UCC filing, engine serial photos, the note for sale post, the HOA notice, my house bills. "I don't want to argue with volume," I said. "I want to speak from position." He paged through and nodded like a man working a checklist. "Second position loan. Current holders a small recovery fund," he summarized. "They're selling the note with the security interest on the boat and equipment. If we buy the assignment, you become the secured party. Negotiations stop being begging and start being a calendar." I exhaled, like watching the RPM needles settle into green. "My priorities," I said, "are my daughter and my house. I don't need anybody's boat. I need a lever to pull them out of my home storyline." First call, the broker. Torres was brief. "We'll buy the note at a reasonable discount today." The guy on the other end changed tone the second he realized we had our paperwork straight. The discount wasn't a fairy tale, but it was enough for a safe landing. Torres jotted numbers, target, filing fees, response window, and slid the scrap to me. I nodded the way you nod when the instructor says, "Auto-rotation again." By noon, an assignment of note and security interest hit my inbox like a stamp finding the right corner. Torres line-edited, sent it back. A few hours later, the e-signed package returned, with confirmation the UCC3 assignment had been filed. "From now on," Torres said, tapping the margin, "you're the secured creditor. Don't let the jargon make you forget the simple thing. The position changed." I nodded. It felt like flipping the aircraft's electricals onto a steadier bus. We drafted a notice of assignment and a demand/proposal letter straight to Rick, and to any lawyer he might have. The letter was polite like a sharpened scalpel. New creditor, total due, proposed payment schedule, and rights in the collateral if he defaulted. At the end, I asked for a short meeting at the dock. If he likes posting photos there every weekend, we could talk on those planks. Afternoon wind off the lake salted my sleeves. Rick was already there. Mom hovered behind him, trying to make her shadow small. I came with Torres. Ava lingered at a distance with her dog, pacing the shore, the look that told me she'd come to borrow sugar as promised. Rick flashed a men talk to men grin. Torres didn't. He set an envelope on the table. "Assignment notice. As of this minute, your creditor is her." He pointed to me the way someone points out wind direction. Rick blinked, then laughed. "You think this is a scare tactic?" Torres shrugged. "Not a tactic. Paper." He slid the proposal over. "Two choices. Your choice. A payment plan on a schedule, same interest, and you and MS Linda vacate this address within a reasonable period with a clear end of occupancy agreement. B, we exercise our UCC rights in the boat and equipment, and separately file to stop any use of her home address for your business." Mom pinched her sleeve, eyes on the boards. I said mild, "You don't have to pick, Mom. This is his company's matter." Rick curled his mouth. "You want my boat." I shook my head. "I want my house out of your story. Pick A and you get breathing room. Pick B and you hand over what you pledged. Either way, you leave my house." I let those 3 words drop like a stone in its right place, no extra roll. He snatched the pages and skimmed. His eyes snagged on secured party may take possession, and his shoulders sank half an inch. He turned to Mom. "See, she's ruining me." Mom's voice, for once, didn't stand with the loudest volume. "She's saving her house." Rick looked at me. "What if I don't sign anything?" Torres pointed to a flaked patch on the table edge. "Then we go with B, and because the papers changed hands, you'll be talking to your creditor, not to family." I laid a neat stack of prints on the wood, the engine serial selfie he'd brag posted, the deck, the storage. "We know what's yours and what isn't," I said. "I don't want anything that's not mine." I slid the HOA notice to the edge. "And your truck can't keep overnighting in that neighborhood, or B, rules are rules." Wind flicked the paper like a fin. Ava coughed, "Small signal, the light is on." Rick leaned back, then stood, paced, turned. "If I pick A, how long?" Torres gave him a number, tight enough not to feel like a favor, realistic enough for a backlot business to survive. "And," I added, "you and my mother leave the house within that window. I'll sign a 30-day short lease so no one calls it throwing you out. After 30, the keys go back on my kitchen table." Silence, a clear plunk of water against hull. Rick lifted his chin, trying to fight with eyes. I didn't. I looked across the lake at my house's shadow laid soft like a folded towel. "I'm not against you, Rick," I said. "I'm against the idea that the loudest person outranks the paperwork. Loud doesn't fly an aircraft and it doesn't sign an assignment." He sat. The pen seesawed between his fingers. "If I sign," he said slowly, "you'll stop humiliating me in front of the neighbors." I tilted my head. "I don't need you humiliated, I need a boundary." I pushed the pen toward him. "Pick." In the end, he signed under option A. His signature looked like what a boat leaves when it scrapes a dock before choosing to hold still. Torres shut the folder and slid it into his case, voice neutral with muscle memory. "We'll email scans tonight. Payment schedule to follow. House keys back on the kitchen table within 30 days, non-negotiable." Mom looked up, eyes wet but clear. "Thank you." I nodded, didn't stare too long at the old sadness in her face so my chest wouldn't catch. "Go on home, Mom," I said. "I've got a bit more to do here." Rick jammed his hands in his pockets and looked at the boat like it was an old friend asking for money. "Someday you'll need me," he muttered. I lifted a shoulder. No line in me needed to win that line. When they left, Ava came over and handed me the leash like a right. "You good?" she asked. "Good," I said. Not loud. We both smiled. I sat on the warm boards and pressed my palm to the wood. In my head, the little map, light witnesses, paperwork boundaries, blinked like a panel cooling down. Needles steady. Cautions going dark. Driving back, wind shoved lake air into the car. I thought of that perfect auto-rotation. No applause, just the truth. The aircraft is intact. I'd hang the porch flag straight, square the table, wait for the scan docks to land. Tonight, I'd set a single bowl on the counter. In the morning, I wanted to see a set of keys beside it. If not, I knew how to bring them home. I pulled to the curb and saw Emma out front throwing with Ava, laughing, glove opening and closing like two small doors that know how to obey. That's the sound I want this house to keep. The rest, the paper, the calendar, the signatures, has slid into its correct slot. In the end, position is how a story decides its ending. Saturday morning, the lake lay flat as sheet metal, a long blade of sunlight skimming its surface. In the kitchen, the white bowl sat where I'd left it, and right beside it, exactly as I'd hoped, the keys. Mom had tucked them in an envelope that said, "Thank you." Inside, no cash, no notes, just an old photo of me at 17, hugging a red lifebuoy on the dock, hair wet, eyes squinting into the sun. On the back, her handwriting, thin as thread. "Back then I thought you knew how to swim. Turns out you knew how to float on your own." I slid the picture into my flight notebook, right into the yellowed, tape-mended cover. Rick was boxing up the garage, cardboard rasping like dry leaves. I stood in the doorway and watched. stacks of company t-shirts, coils of mooring line, bent catalogs. Nothing of mine left in there except the faint detergent in a cleaning rag. He shouldered box after box out to the truck, never meeting my eyes. With the last box, he paused like a man about to speak a scripted line, then erased it. "I'll pay it back," he said quietly. I nodded. I didn't say don't or do. I just opened the garage door wider and let sunlight flood the floor, even the dusty corners. Ava wandered over with a tin camping mug. "HOA got the notice about the parking change," she said, as casual as a weather report. "Thanks," I said. "I'll hose the patio this afternoon." She clocked the keys on the kitchen table through the glass and smiled. "Looks like a ritual." "It is," I said. "A ritual of giving position back." We stood a bit, listening to the thunk of boxes and to Emma in the living room counting time for her practice piece. By noon, the paperwork was signed, the last box loaded. Mom adjusted a shawl on Rick's shoulder on reflex, then turned and hugged me, not crying, just a firm squeeze at the elbow. "I live with him," she said softly, "but I'm not inside his company's story anymore." I nodded. I wasn't asking her to choose between the words me and him. I was asking her to stand in the right place. Tired grown-ups need a sentence to hold, and I'd taped mine to the wall in 4 lines. The truck fired and coughed over the lake like a stubborn throat. My porch pennant gave a little wave, then fell still. Ava ticked something on her HOA clipboard, clicked her tongue, and shoulder bumped me. "Come over for apple pie later." I laughed and felt a pack slide off my back. In my head, the panel lights blinked out one by one, warnings off. The house went quiet for hours, like a flight line after the last bird is bagged. I opened windows end to end and let the breeze run the rooms. I laid a fresh cloth on the table like unrolling a new chart. "Front yard," I called to Emma. She came running, glove thumping her thigh, bop bop like 2 fish tapping the surface. "I've got the throwing contest at school tonight," she said, eyes bright. "You coming?" I grinned. "If I don't come, who's going to count your breaths?" She hugged me, sweat and soap mixing like the smell right after a quick rain. That afternoon, I spent an hour scrubbing the deck, spraying moss off the steps, scouring old grease halos around the grill. Everything from that party went back to clean wood. I straightened the flag. This time it tapped the post with a gentle, even click, none of the irritated knocking from before. I swapped the porch bulb for a brighter one. Light here isn't for show, it's for seeing. Evening brought an email from Torres. Plan activated, first due date, payment portal. One short line at the end. Hold position. I replied with a photo, keys on the bowl, Emma's glove beside them. No caption. Anyone who lives by paper knows what that picture says. At Emma's elementary graduation, the gym was strung with blue and white balloons. The varnished floor shone like the lake turned upside down. I arrived early, middle row. Ava texted parking and waved from the door. The PA squeaked and squealed, and names paraded past the lights like new leaves. When they called Emma, my heart rarely skipped off beat. She held her certificate, looked into the crowd, found me, and smiled like a daytime moon. Afterward, we stood in the hall where the smells of floor polish, balloon glue, and hot cheese mingled. Emma tucked under my arm, cheek against the flight jacket I'd thrown on for the evening chill. "I drew a new picture," she said. "Our house with the door light on." "Who's in it?" I asked. "Me and you, Nana's in the yard holding an apple pie." I laughed. "And Rick?" She considered, then shook her head. "He's on a boat, he's probably busy." Kids are concise, like cockpit calls. We took the drawing home and pinned it to the fridge with the whale magnet. Next to it, the 4-line rules of engagement, edges curled a little from kitchen steam. I smoothed it not because I fear wrinkles, but because what's clear should stay clear. "What's for dinner?" Emma asked. I pulled a marinated chicken. "What we know how to cook." She shrugged. "I just need you there." That sounded like skids touching down without needing to check the gauges. That night we sat on the steps, porch light on, feet on cool wood. I told her about the old man on the litter who'd said I set the glass down easy. She giggled. Because you're strong. I shook my head. Because I know what breaks if you drop it. Far off, a trainer helicopter ghosted by, lights blinking, rotor a small hush riding the breeze. I didn't tilt my chin up. I listened with my back and shoulders, the parts that have held an airframe steady. Some sounds become lullabies for people in my line of work. When Emma slept, I opened the flight notebook and wrote the last line of this chapter on the tape-scarred margin. No one flies your life for you. No one gets to steer it by fear. I closed it and set it back in its place. The porch light painted a runway stripe across the cover. Beside it, the keys lay quiet again, not a prop in an argument anymore, just keys. I dimmed the house, leaving a pool by the entry and the porch light for anyone coming home late. Outside, the lake went black as glass. Somewhere, a boat light blinked steady. I didn't wish it under, I just hoped it stayed in its proper channel. The slider rolled shut, smooth now, not rasping. The house breathed evenly. So did I. Before bed, I sent Ava a short email. Small Bright Field Scholarship, 2 awards this year for military kids around the lake. Help me draft criteria. A minute later, she replied with a star. I smiled. A lever is only good if it becomes a lift. Next time someone's at the edge, they'll have a rope not to pull them into my house, but to help them find their own shore. Up the stairs, I flicked off the porch light. No need to leave an eye open anymore. The house guards itself now with the straight lines we drew. In the kind dark, I heard Emma turn and sigh, a happy little sound. The field of fireflies in my chest dimmed like someone whispering, smooth landing. I closed my eyes and pictured morning, coffee, the lake brushing the bank, and a long day where no one touches my switches but me. The sky doesn't promise. It opens, wide enough for anyone who knows how to hold position.